Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Truck drivers of Reddit. What's some of the creepiest stories from out in the middle of nowhere? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts. And subscribe. I work in northern Nevada nightly, running between Reno and Salt Lake City, pulling triples. I only work nights, so I'm used to working at night and don't really ever get sleepy. So I'm positive this wasn't a hallucination. Well, I had to take my break, so pulled onto an on-ramp around 3 a.m. near Hellick, Nevada, and started surfing the internet. I distinctly remember it being a moonless night, which meant it was about as dark as night gets in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch something moving in my mirror at the very back of my third trailer, more than 100 feet away. There are tons of perpendicularly opposed lights on our trailer, so whatever is moving is only illuminated for a split second at a time. When I get the chance to focus on it, I realize someone is sprinting up my set toward my cab with something in each hand. Luckily, I was idling on a steep incline on-ramp, and clutched in and stuck it in fourth and gunned it. In hindsight, I'm glad I wasn't as heavy as I usually am, 110,000 pounds, and could really get up to speed quickly. I only take my breaks now in populated areas. Not a truck driver, but my dad always tells me the story of when he was backpacking alone with his dog in the Pacific Coast Trail in Northern California in the late 70s. My dad had parked his car on the side of the highway, and he and his dog were about 7 miles down the trail. It was getting to be late in the afternoon, so he was hoping to find a place to spend the night. Suddenly, his dog starts to make a low growl and the hair on her back stands up. My dad was thinking there was possibly a bear or something nearby, as his dog was a very experienced backpack dog and was not easily rattled by things. He looks around and doesn't see anything. He notices that Mika is basically pointing out a spot on the trail with her nose a little bit ahead of them. He decides to walk up and see what she's looking at, and there he finds a massive footprint. To hear him describe it, this footprint was larger than anything a human can make, extremely deep, and had claw punctures. He said he stood and stared at it in disbelief for at least 5 minutes because he didn't understand how this could possibly be on the trail. He thought perhaps it was a hoax or folks messing around, but he hadn't seen a soul, and he was in the middle of nowhere. Who would come out of the middle of the trail, where there are hardly any hikers, and make a hoax footprint of some sort? And why was the dog so upset? He said he couldn't explain it, but he basically had this feeling of terror and turned around on the trail right then. He didn't know if it was his mind playing tricks on him, but he swore he heard sounds in the trees nearby that sounded like a large animal as he booked it out. His dog remained completely alarmed the whole hike back, whimpering and pacing, which was out of character. He said he basically ran 7 miles back down the trail as fast as he could go with his pack on and tore out of there in his car. To this day, he still claims it was one of the freakiest things he's ever experienced. Not a truck driver, but this still haunts me. Was driving from Chicago to Tampa to move with my dad. Somewhere in the middle of Georgia at 2 a.m., I'm mindlessly driving when my dad yells, "Yo, pay attention to the red lights." Tons of cars ahead of us are stopped, smoke in the air. We slowly approach, and first thing we see is a little car completely engulfed in flames. Then all of a sudden, an 18-wheeler starts bouncing, like how some people put hydraulics in their little pimp cars. Big boy was bouncing with flames coming out the back. I honked at the rubberneckers in front of me because I didn't want to see the explosion, and there were already 12 cars pulled over. Too many cooks in the kitchen. The most surreal thing I'd ever seen. Someone later told us it was the brake system. Looked like a demon-possessed truck. Many years ago, I was driving south on a freeway in the middle of Utah. I haven't seen another car going for miles, even though it's the middle of the day. Then I see a semi ahead in the right lane of this 2-lane southbound freeway. I'm gaining on him in my lovely red sports car, so I pull into the left lane to pass. I was slightly over the speed limit to pass him quickly. He was doing slightly under the limit. There's no shoulder because it's some kind of bridge or culvert crossing. Remember, no other cars anywhere around. Just as I reach the hallway point on the semi, he starts changing lanes for no reason into my lane. I have nowhere to go because there is no shoulder and I'm going to die. Time slowed, the world blurred. Somehow I floored it in time and my wonderful car flung me forward ahead of death. He was fully in my lane when I looked in the rearview mirror. I have no doubt that he tried to kill me. It was clear, sunny, and he had nothing in front of him that would cause him to change lanes. There were no curves to hide my very red car as I overtook him. He could easily see me coming on the long straightaway. There was absolutely no reason for him to change lanes right as I was passing him. This part of the freeway was always isolated back in the day. There were no cars near us, no animals, and I saw no car for the next few miles as I raced away from him. If he tapped my car or if I overreacted, it probably would have looked like an unfortunate accident. All right, I do enjoy the trucker stories because they're really diverse. You might get some supernatural, you might get some UFO, you might get some EMT first responder stuff. So again, it kind of hits all the bases there. So I appreciate this topic, but also want to give a shout out today to Macy T. Ask and ye shall receive. So again, thanks for your support, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Have a good one. Was driving down I-5 in the Pacific Northwest. Foggy day in the morning with my wife. Lots of traffic with the morning commute. I see what looks like a tan box in the middle of the road. As I get closer, I consider switching lanes, look over my shoulder to see if it's clear when my wife says, "It's a person." I swerve into the next lane and stop us on the shoulder. We could clearly see it was a body of a woman, ever so crumpled. A semi-truck is coming behind us and doesn't see. He didn't have time to swerve like I did, and he hit her body and kept on going. We called 911, and by now cars were piling up in front of us on the shoulder. Some of them hit her body as well. In the rear view, I can see a car with a door open and flashers on. It's perfectly in line with the lady's body. I wonder to this day what possessed her to get out of the car and step into traffic. I suppose I'll never get an answer. My father was a truck driver for many years, and he told me one of the scariest moments he had while driving a big rig. It was several years ago. I'm not sure how many, at least 15 to 20. He was driving at night in Indiana, I believe, and a van pulled up next to him. They were fast enough in his lane next to him that the side door of the van was in front of his truck. All of a sudden, the sliding side door opens and they toss a guy out in front of the truck, so he'd get hit, and of course that's what happened. He said he felt sick, especially when he felt the dude making his way under the truck. Turns out dude was dead before being tossed out the van, something like a mob execution. Another was when he was working at night doing repo. He was passing through a city around home and saw a dude on the corner rocket crash, and the guy was really unlucky and got decapitated by those aluminum guardrails on the side of the highway, mainly for exits. But there are some before a bridge and leads up to it. The helmet was still spinning by the time cops got there. Head was still inside. I was a bus driver, and I did what they call the first sign on shifts, which are the first buses out of the depot. I usually started around 3:30 to 4 a.m. And one day I was running late for work, and I was naughty and didn't do my pre-departure check and took off out of the depot. I was about halfway to the starting point of my route in a bus that is pitch black with interior lights off when I hear a voice right behind me say, "Where are we?" I absolutely shit myself, look up, and here's this homeless guy standing right behind me in the bus. I said, "What are you doing on the bus?" And it turns out he slept in it overnight because I didn't do my pre-departure check. I didn't notice him. Guess who never missed doing a pre-departure check ever again? I do have a somewhat creepy story. My friends and I were taking a road trip from Arizona to California. We decided we wanted to go before the sunrise, and we left about midnight. We were about 3 hours in, but my car needed gas, and the girls and I wanted to stop and toke up. We had a considerable amount of weed in the car, and we wanted to get rid of all of it before our drive back. So we start to roll a joint in this poorly lit gas station. We were just about to take a hit when this guy comes running up to my car and starts to pound on the driver's side window. I rolled it down just enough to talk to him, but not enough for him to force entry into my car. He seemed scared and shaken up, but something didn't seem right. He was sweaty, and I could tell he was looking inside my car for something. At first, I thought he was an undercover cop, and my heart was racing. However, he said he had some car trouble and asked if we could take a look at it. At this point, it was 3 a.m. I had all my doors locked and had not gotten gas yet. I knew nothing of cars, and neither did any of the ladies in the car. We told him this. I told him I could call a tow for him. Although he persisted on using my phone, the other girls were freaking out, and of course I was too. I could see a payphone by the vending machine at the gas station and told him I would slip him a few quarters through the crack in my window so he could call whoever he would like. Out of nowhere, his tone changed. He got really calm and looked me dead in the eyes. He told me to unlock the door. My eyes darted toward the direction of his car, and we could see 2 other males pacing while one male was sitting in the driver's seat. I noped right out of there, told him to go for himself, rolled up the window, and hopped right back on the highway. I'll know for a fact, if we had gotten out of that car, we would have never been seen again. I called the police to report and asked to be notified if there was an arrest made. I never heard back. Arizona is number 1 for sex trafficking. Be safe out there, ladies and gentlemen. My friend and I were driving south toward Gallup, New Mexico in his elderly mother's Prius, bringing it back to Southern California for her from Colorado. Middle of nowhere on a dark road about 2:30 in the morning when this 1990s safari van starts getting right up our tail. We move over to let the van pass, and he gets right behind us and starts flashing his lights. My buddy gets into the other lane again and slows down enough that I can see that the license plate has a piece of cardboard taped over it. The van then starts swerving to try and force us off the road. My buddy floors it, but it's a Prius. We pull ahead for a second, but the van rapidly catches up and starts trying to force us off the road at speed. As we approached an off-ramp, I decided I had enough of this shit and pulled my 1911 out. I rolled down the window and leaned out, presenting my weapon and preparing to send rounds into this van. The van slammed on the brakes and shot off the off-ramp. We continued into Gallup and phoned the police, who told us that they were probably trying to get us to stop to rob us. They did not expect any problems from a Prius with California plates. Scariest situation I have run into while driving for sure. I used to team drive with my buddy OTR, and he was night blind, so I get the night shift. It was about 3 a.m., and we were driving through Central Oregon, and I had 2 trailer tires blow. So I pulled off the side of the road right near an exit for Dead Man's Pass. I woke my buddy up, and we expected the blowout and started getting a hold of somewhere to come fix the tire. While waiting for a call back, we both notice an eerie light coming from the edge of the woods off the highway, about 40 yards away, in front of our truck. Mind you, it is an extremely remote area in which we had not seen a town or light in probably 2 or 3 hours, and hadn't even seen another vehicle for an hour or so. We had some time to kill, so we started to walk up and see what was causing the light. We got about 10 yards away from the source to discover that it was a goat hanging upside, suspended from 2 trees with Christmas lights wrapped around it and lit up. We didn't know if it was a real goat or fake, how the Christmas lights were powered up. We immediately ran back to the truck and drove the blown tires 70 miles to the nearest truck stop, and we're not going to stick around and find out the answer to those questions. Creepy bugger who lived on a ranch in the middle of nowhere wanted to show me his dope-ass man cave basement and wouldn't stop hitting on me while I'm just trying to deliver some damn stone. Thank F I had my winch bar and pepper spray. I literally dropped shit as fast as I could because I already unstrapped and had my forklift down. Told the boss I'll never go back after. Only reason I didn't flat out run for it anyways was because I was driving a 3-ton death machine and didn't see a gun. My little forklift is quick. I'm a tiny-ass chick, and the company sent out a gym bro, ripped coworker next. That dude got the same treatment from the creepy guy and thought he was going to get kidnapped too. Ugh. In like 3 years doing this shit, that's the only time I've been worried like that. They stopped sending people after David came back scared too. My dad is a trucker and has a couple stories. Nothing super weird, but this is probably the weirdest. So somewhere between California and Texas, along the Mexico border, I think, there's a stretch of highway with no cell signal or any kind of signal could contact people for a good couple hours. A lot of truckers avoid it if they can for that reason. One time, my dad was driving this route at night, and at some point, the road and his headlights just lit up with what he describes as white fur. All over the road, there was some kind of small white animal. He tells me truckers don't normally stop for wildlife in the road. It's usually too late to stop by the time they see it, and anything hit by a truck probably died instantly. This was no exception. It was sad, but he plowed through whatever it was on the road, and apparently there were so many that he was plowing through them for at least a few minutes straight. The next morning, he had to hose down his truck at the truck stop because the side of it was just covered in blood. My guess is there was a herd of rabbits in the road for whatever reason, and their fur looked white in his headlights. I'm a delivery driver for a florist. About 2 or 3 months ago, I had to deliver an arrangement about 2-hour drive into the country from the city near the end of my shift. When I arrive at the address, I don't see any house, but these old farming sheds and a really long dirt road. I get out of the truck, grab the arrangement, and walk down this dirt road. Sun is pretty much about to disappear, and I've walked about 10 minutes and am questioning whether or not I should have braved driving the truck down. I finally see this old shack with the light on, so I walk up to it. I'm about to go to the front door when I hear from around the side of the house, "Just leave it," I answer. "Does blank live here?" "Just leave it by the door. It'll eventually get to them." I do so and walk as quick as I could back to the truck, lock it, and drive away a bit quicker than normal. Back when my dad, as a freight train driver, he had to stop at a red light in a wooded area in the middle of nowhere. The guard on the train, who's usually at the back of the train, radioed to tell him that it's going to take a while, so Dad got off his cabin to take a leak. As he was watering the bushes, he saw a relatively well-dressed man approaching him, and he asked my dad to give him a lift to the nearest station. This man had a backpack and, for some reason, an axe. Dad decided to give him a lift and asked him to take a seat in the cabin. All throughout the 2-hour journey to the next station, the man didn't put down his backpack or his axe. He was eyeing him constantly through the corner of the eye and read a manic expression that you absolutely don't get from a lumberjack who had gotten off work at 2 a.m. After dropping off the man, the guard and my dad notified the cops and gave them the man's description. A month or so later, the department was issued a notice not to give lifts to strangers, as the man had picked up was a gang member and had just shot a man and buried him in pieces in that general vicinity. My dad started driving trucks in 1971. A story he told me once was how he was driving through the night to pick up a load of cement. He had a headlight burn out, so he kicked on the high beams to be able to see, and there in the middle of the road was a California Highway Patrol car, doors all open, and the lights off, sitting in the middle of the road. He came to a stop and got out to see if anyone was around, but couldn't find anyone. So he got back into his truck and kept heading for the cement plant. When he got there, he called it in to the CHP. Turns out a couple of chippies pulled a guy over, who then proceeded to shoot and kill the officers. My dad had rolled up on the scene just after it went down. You can look it up on the CHP website, December 22nd, 1978. My personal story isn't as scary, really. I worked for the Department of Transportation and was operating a plow truck on a little mountain highway clearing mud and rock slides during heavy rain. I had been at it for about 10 hours when I had to just stand up and stretch a bit. I stop in the middle of the road with all my strobes and lights going and stand on the running board of the truck. A few seconds later, I hear rocks and pebbles rolling down the mountainside, so I get back into the truck. As soon as I close the door, a boulder the same size as my dump truck lands on the road right in front of my plow. If I'd been a few feet further forward, it would have killed me. I worked for a nonprofit that was trying to help another nonprofit on a project helping to get prostitutes into rehab and job training. We partnered with the FBI, local police, district attorney, public defenders, and a local hospital. It was an incredible program that chose to see prostitutes as victims instead of perpetrators. As I was getting my organization ready to get involved, I ended up spending time with the FBI agent who started the program. I asked him how the FBI got involved. He explained that after 9/11, the FBI was tasked with figuring out how Al-Qaeda would attack interior cities like Dallas. They determined that they may pull a Timothy McVeigh and load a semi-truck full of explosive materials, drive them into a city and detonate it. So they decided to start monitoring the truck stops where the terrorists would stage the attack. They monitored for months and of course found that Al-Qaeda was nowhere to be seen in American truck stops. Rather, they found that the truck stops were filled with really screwed up activity, including drugs, prostitution, human trafficking, etc. He explained that while the vast majority of truck drivers are good people trying to make a living, that the nature of the trucking industry with self-employed operators created an environment open to many ex-convicts who couldn't get other employment because of the check-the-box hiring policy. So ex-cons often brought trucks, worked for themselves, and were hired by companies to drive their freight, which eliminated many of the company's liabilities had the former convicts worked for the companies themselves. Long story short, he detailed the crimes, including the fact that the FBI was tracking many unsolved murders and serial murderers, human trafficking rings, etc. The more I learned about the truck stops, the scarier they became. I ended up going on a multiple law enforcement ride as part of the program. Let me say this. Truck stop prostitutes are in terrible, terrible shape. Think about what must have gone on for them that they're hanging out at a truck stop, turning $10 to $20 tricks. It's awful. I saw horrible things, including child trafficking and prostitution. The thing I saw still makes me sick to my stomach. To this day, when driving across the country, I will gladly skip the truck stops and go to a smaller gas station. I'm forever creeped out by what I've seen. My uncle used to drive a truck from Northern Europe down to Iraq in the 80s when the Saddam regime was trying to modernize the country and spending loads of money importing industrial equipment and foreign experts. Driving down to Iraq meant going through Turkey, because going through the Soviet Union was obviously not an option. Taking the Turkish route was ridiculously dangerous because at the time, Turkey had no social safety nets, and they just experienced some kind of economic collapse, which left millions of people unemployed, homeless, and destitute. In certain regions of Turkey, the desperate and starving people set up huge tent cities and shanty towns along the roads, hoping that some kind of opportunity passing along the road would provide them with some kind of wealth or at least a meal. But, being desperate, they would often resort to banditry in an attempt to get some cash. One of their favorite methods was stopping foreign trucks, killing the drivers, and just stealing everything. They do anything and everything to stop these trucks, then just descend on them like a swarm of ants attacking a larger animal. The most common method was bandits placing large objects in the middle of the road. Foreign drivers were instructed to never stop, just ram their way through obstacles. When the bandits realized this, they started kidnapping children and shoving them in front of the trucks to make the driver stop. Again, foreign drivers were instructed to just floor it and keep going, because if they stopped, they'd almost certainly be murdered. Another common issue was police corruption. The Turkish police would often stop foreign truck drivers and just rob them at gunpoint because the cops knew that drivers carried large amounts of cash to pay for food, fuel, etc. Other times, the police would make truck drivers follow them to secluded areas where they'd murder the truckers and steal the truck. Another thing they'd do was kidnap foreign drivers by arresting them on made-up charges and demanding huge amounts of money to free them from jail. So, haulage contractors instructed their drivers to never stop for the Turkish police and to ram police cars if necessary. My uncle said he had to ram his way through obstacles on the road a few times, but he refuses to talk about whether or not any of those obstacles were alive or not. I'm pretty sure he got PTSD from this shit, but he'd never admit to it.